I didn't imagine that it would be like this. And now that it's here, I don't want it. Nope. See, when God first put the idea to be a minister in my head and heart, I was 16, and I was sitting in a seat just like yours, probably a little further back, in a building a lot like this. And I imagined myself there, on the pulpit, like some sort of, predatory preacher, like leaning over and just saying the truth. The halftime speech, the battle hymn, the sermon that changed everything, Martin Luther King says the I Have a Dream speech, and suddenly we all have civil rights, that kind of thing. The West Wing, Aaron Sorkin penned moment that turns the plot on its head, because God knows the only thing that has to happen is a clever word, and just the plot shifts. Incidentally, that's also the plot of every Full House episode. I wanted to be there to say true things in that moment of crisis. The words would be there, and I would say them, and things would change. Then the crisis happens. And suddenly a very talkative, performative introvert gets very quiet. And that preacher doesn't seem appropriate anymore. There was another school shooting this week. Another group of school children dead. And this is on top of all of the other crises in the world. That it's not the first school shooting we've seen in recent memory, that it comes on the heels of a racist shooting in Buffalo, New York. There's a war in Ukraine, there's violence throughout the world, and then there's the loss and the pain of a pandemic parish, the losses we feel personally. How many funerals have we celebrated lately? And I don't want to be over there right now. And the same cycle is happening. The same cycle of one group offering thoughts and prayers, and another group saying that thoughts and prayers are not enough. In this quiet, I know one thing, that the first group is lying, and the second group is mistaken. Thoughts and prayers are important and necessary now as ever. I think we need some new ones. And I pray that we say them. Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. And this strikes so many of us as empty. Because it is. But there's something wrong with that. Look in your prayer books. You can touch them now. Page 856, if you want to follow along, and I'll just read it for you. What is prayer? 856. What is prayer? Prayer is responding to God by thought and by deeds, with or without words. Prayer is responding to God by thought and by deeds, with or without words. How dare we accept the easy bifurcation of thought and deed, of prayer and action? They're all part of that same response to God. No one who is thinking can avoid the thought of what a hollow point does to a fourth grader's body. And no one who is praying can sit with that thought and allow it to happen again. Anyone who says thoughts and prayers in the wake of a tragedy and does not tell you what they're thinking and what they're praying is lying. Because thoughts and prayers are exactly what we should be doing when we encounter an abomination such as this. The church is hyped up. It is trained to point out sexual immorality, to be petty and gossipy. But its thoughts and prayers become empty when real tragedy strikes. We should be thinking and we should be praying. We're Anglicans. Our predecessors fought and died to think and pray for ourselves and pray at the same time. And yet our response when someone says thoughts and prayers is to only say that they're useless and have to be combined with something else. As if a response to God wasn't sufficient. An appeal to the Almighty was always empty. Thoughts and prayers give us the ability to sit with difficult truth and imagine another world. Woe to the people who would emptily employ them as a slogan or dismiss them. It's not that I think thoughts and prayers are empty, it's that I think we don't do it. And I think we don't do it because we feel trapped in so many ways. There's nothing to be done. Second Amendment jurisprudence being what it is, this is just an unfortunate consequences of our policies. And if we'd like to change them, there's the anti-egalitarian Senate, there's an electoral college, there's, the Second Amendment jurisprudence and everything like that. There's nothing to be done. Notice how the politics and the economics and our social and cultural norms constrain what you can think and what you can pray for. But you and I, we don't have to be liberal or conservative. We're Christian. We follow the Lord is King, as the psalmist says. We follow the Almighty Alpha and Omega. We can imagine whatever we want when it comes to politics. Second Amendment jurisprudence be damned. And yet we don't. It's thought and prayer that allows you to break out of the prison that you're trapped in. And when you dismiss every thought and every prayer as empty, and when every thought and prayer offered is really empty and not a response to God, it's real easy to remain in what is possible, what is allowable, and permitted by a system that permits this. We have to free ourselves from that prison. Just as surely as Paul and Silas were freed, and they were freed by what? Thoughts and prayers. But that thought and that prayer, it takes time. Paul and Silas Paul, out of mere annoyance, tosses off an exorcism, and it happens that very hour. Our thoughts and our prayers, they don't come true in the ways we might like or in a timely fashion. That's not the only purpose of thought and prayer. It is thought and prayer that allows us to speak the truth in love to one another, to examine hard truths and bring them in here, this apolitical space where we're not supposed to talk about anything that matters. We can think and we can pray in this space, if no other. And we can think and imagine and pray for a different world. And it's those thoughts and prayers, that response to a God who didn't intend these tragedies, that is at the heart of what we do here. I think we need new thoughts. And I think we need new prayers. And I think we need to be honest about what they are. Because this is what haunts me. If the church can't imagine another way, then the shooter's actions aren't appalling. They're the way of the world. After all, he's not going against the conventional wisdom of the world in which violence solves problems. He's doing what the world demands. Christians have to think and pray and show the world a different way, where we solve problems with honesty and forgiveness and discussion, reason and prayer, and not violence. And it's thinking and prayer that allows us to sit here in the midst of tragedy and find the presence of God and respond to it. You see, it's not going to happen this very hour. We need to imagine the earthquake. We need to imagine God coming in and doing what we cannot do for ourselves, to think and pray and participate in what God might be doing in this world. We can no longer offer empty thoughts and prayers, nor dismiss thought and prayer as ineffectual. Prayer is a response to God. When we confront situations like this, the myth is that all you have to do is say the magic words. That one sermon, one song, one church service can change everything. But what history has shown is that what changes things is a lot of words, a lot of thought, a lot of prayer, a lot of creation, not reactivity, that changes the world. I had imagined a different kind of preaching. I wanted it to be the West Wing. And instead, it just gets very quiet. But in that quiet, I meet someone else. Someone who prayed with his disciples. Someone who thought and reasoned with men and women, who prayed with them and for them as he stared down the crucifixion. This Gospel of John occurs just before Jesus is arrested. And his prayer is that the love that was given to him will be in his disciples. He looks at a world that does not know God and asks that his disciples continue to think and continue to pray, that their light may shine and God's love may be known. I think that's a nice thought. And I pray we make it so. Amen.